So what exactly is wisdom? Well, in this first part of my interview with Radio Marlow FM, I'll explain exactly what it is. But more importantly, why would you care to know? What's the benefit? Well, the first one is depth. The deeper your sense of self, the more enriching and fulfilling your life can be. It can actually be an entirely different level. Another benefit is a sense of freedom. And most importantly of all, it can help you be true to your heart, because the alternative to wisdom is to get caught up in your head and the judgments that lead you astray from your heart. And in the second part of the interview, I'll talk further about the freedom aspect and introduce the concept of a third stage of life, which can be freer and more unself-conscious. So let's dive in.
And also my second guest was Reinhard Kowalski, who is a clinical psychologist talking about mindfulness meditation. And I'm delighted to welcome my third guest, James Backer, who's just arrived in the studio. James, good morning.
How you doing, Dermot?
I'm very well, thank you. You've been travelling from Wales, is that?
I was on the south coast this last week and just up from Wales last night to get back. So.
On a well-earned break?
Very well earned, yes.
So James is a wisdom coach, and I'm looking forward to hearing how he became a wisdom coach,
right?
And what a wisdom coach actually does. I imagine, it helps people to understand more about themselves, especially the inner wisdom that they have within themselves. Absolutely.
How I became a wisdom coach?
Yeah, tell me. Okay. How did you get to become a wisdom coach? What was happening in your earlier life or your work life?
I had two things that happened early in life. One when I was 4 and one when I was 16, which were moments of some sense of awareness. When I was 4, I was a 4-year-old, so I wasn't entirely very conscious, but there was an awareness that there was a problem and in our family, and generally something wasn't quite right.
So how old were you when this was?
4 years old, yeah.
4, wow.
Yeah, pretty much just after a toddler. And I remember getting a sense that I need to become, as I understand it now, more conscious. And it's kind of like you don't have the muscles, so you're struggling, but you know you need to.
How would you? Yeah.
Yes, you need to build the awareness muscles. It was just a sense of that. So that was
something
largely
wasn't
relating
quite
to
right.
love. Yes. And then the second one at 16, I was just staring into the night sky one evening, and I got a slight sense of depression that I had to live my life and not other people's lives. So I had a set specific life that was the one that I was meant to lead, and that there were other lives that other people were leading. One thing particularly was riding motorbikes, which was something wasn't for me, wasn't my life, but it was somebody else's personality.
Some people were able to do things that you were not doing.
Yeah, it was more about who they were. Actually, as it turns out, I don't want to ride motorbikes, but there was a sense of I'm in this corridor and they're in that corridor, and this is how it's meant to be. And the fact that felt uncomfortable, I guess, drove me to have a sense that there was something the other side of that truth or that understanding. So things like that, wisdom really picked me. I wrote a wisdom course about 8 years ago.
You wrote one?
I did, yes. That's the one I now teach. It's a 20-module course. But I pretty much, from 16, that kind of time, pretty much got a sense that wisdom was going to be what I was going to do. It wasn't so much something I chose. It was simply something that was within me and arose. And also, because of the difficulties that I had in my life, I had to have an understanding of psychology, which I obviously didn't have at the start, so I had to build that up very quickly to deal with some situations of my own.
And so you use the word wisdom, and I think most of us we probably don't define wisdom. Wisdom is a word.
No, I have to. Yes.
So what is, you use it and you say I had wisdom, or I have to have wisdom. What's
yeah, absolutely.
What is wisdom?
Well, wisdom. Let's start with the definition. Then wisdom is defined as the capacity to understand emptiness. Okay.
Is it?
It is. Yes. Emptiness with a capital E.
Okay.
And we can think of emptiness as the absence of form, or with a capital F. So emptiness and form are kind of like opposites. It's one or the other.
So for me, wisdom is wisdom. Until you said that, wisdom would have been about knowing, being wise.
Right.
Being somebody
knowledge
who
is
knows.
knowing.
Yes, but the definition that we normally use in our language is that as somebody who has wisdom is somebody who has had a bit of experience in this particular area. But what you're describing is something slightly more esoteric.
Yes, I'm going to go into a natural piece of logic to explain it.
Okay.
I usually qualify because people use all kinds of words like wisdom and knowledge and intelligence and genius and all these kind of things. And of course, everybody has slightly different definitions of what they mean. So I always say people have whatever definitions people use are fine. But I'm talking specifically about a pure wisdom. Separate to knowledge is knowledge, intelligence is puzzle solving. Genius can be an intellectual mathematical genius like an Einstein, but largely genius is a form of tapping into non-intellectual flow and information. So I'm using a wisdom in a certain pure sense.
Okay.
And as you know, I teach it with the piece of logic, which is the relationship between subject and object.
Mm-hmm.
A subject is defined as that which is aware of an object. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So any object, like you've given me a glass of water, so that's an object. I'm the subject, I'm aware of the glass of water. I'm the subject, I'm aware of this pen. Okay? So the pen's the object. Subject, object.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? If we want to get in touch with who we really are, to answer the age-old question of who am I, the things that we usually define ourselves with are our possessions, our relationships, our statuses, our body, our looks, our age, our finances, our emotions, and our thoughts, beliefs, and desires. These are great. They're all things that we have, but because we're aware of them, there has to be a deeper part of us that is that part of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
You are, okay. So that awareness allows us to see that objects, these emotions, thoughts, bodies, and such like that we have, are great. They're things that we have, but they're not what we are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So underneath that is a sense of self that is prior to thought and has no need for definition. Okay? So if I define myself by my status, I'm going to get constricted and attached around the notion that I need to protect my job or my status in society, whatever it is.
So that's the conditioned self that I've been in some way picked up and conditioned that's how I need to be. The identity that I've acquired.
Rather than trusting the underlying inherent who we are, which feels great just to flow with, we come out of ourselves, we give our authority, our power, all these kind of things that need for approval, need to feel okay, is outside of ourselves in notions, in things, in possessions, all these kind of things. Now, we can achieve these things and we can enjoy them, but when we actually have our sense of self is tied up in them, mm-hmm. when actually it isn't our true nature, because they're things that we're aware of, we become less able to function, we become at odds with ourselves, because one part of us is trying to
conflicted.
Absolutely,
between what we are doing or being, who we're pretending to be, and who we kind of would like the actual natural way that we would love to be, that we actually are.
Let's see your true self without any masks and without any need to be this or that. And so we have a sense of self. The wisdom teaches us that the true sense of self is prior to definition. Hence the definition that wisdom is the capacity to understand emptiness.
Great. It's that emptiness, yeah.